Yes, wie is in beeld? Well, hello, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome for the first, Taste the Silence online tasting global. My name is Funs. I'm working for La Trappe. I'm an export manager for a couple of years now, and we're gonna do this tasting together with Rick. And Rick will introduce himself now.
Funs, it's first of all an awesome pleasure to be here in Café Den Borrel in Deurne, which is now the center of the world. And we will indeed be tasting the silence together. My name is Rick Kempen. I work as beer ambassador with Biere & Co. With a trading house. We import beers from across the globe into the Netherlands, and we distribute them to bars, restaurants, and supermarkets and stuff. And I believe I have the best job ever, because my job is really being a beer ambassador, and that means doing tastings, presentations, and sharing knowledge and love about beer to everyone who wants to start loving beer. And it's an awesome pleasure to do this global Taste the Silence tasting with you here from Deurne.
Well, Rick, awesome that you are here right now, and I'm very happy that we can use the establishment of Café Den Borrel in Deurne. Please like also the Facebook page of Deurne, of the Borrel. And first of all, what we're gonna do right now is give the word to our CEO, and I'm our technical guy from the Borrel. He will start a small introduction and a welcome word from Thijs. So, cheers.
Dear all, welcome to the first virtual La Trappe beer tasting worldwide. We are very pleased that you found your way to us. We want to give you a very nice evening, and be safe, and cheers.
Well, thanks Thijs for a good welcome word, and cheers to you also at home. First of all, we want to tell you, keep your distance. We are now in a very, very strange time all over the world with a horrible virus, a horrible disease. And we need to solve this problem together. And it's only working when we are keeping distance and looking out for each other. That's first of all what I want to say before we're going to start the tasting. For now, I think we're going to start, Rick, with our first beer. And afterwards, during the tasting, we're going to see a small movie for 4 minutes that our prior, Brother Isaac, is going to tell the 3 rules what we need to be a Trappist brewery. What do you think, Rick?
It sounds like a great plan to start tasting some beer, Funs. I'm game.
Okay, we're game on. Well, the first beer we're going to drink is the La Trappe Blonde. It's a 6.5 EBV beer. It's a blonde beer. It's a typical Belgian style beer. It's not a Belgian beer because we are based in the Netherlands in Berkel and Schaut. And now we're going to open the beer, and we're also going to taste together with you. And unfortunately, we have 3 time lapse we have to do, Rick. So we have to taste 3 times this perfect beer, I think.
It's a rotten job, but someone has to do it. And I'm really looking forward to doing this triple version, Taste the Silence at home.
Cheers. Well, first thing...
Yeah, maybe it's a good idea, Funs, if you sort of explain what the best way is to actually pour a La Trappe.
Well, first we need the right glass. And we have the prior goblet. It's our Trappist glass. And we have our beer. So we're going to pour the beer without, how do you say it in English? Clocking?
Well, excessive gulping from the bottle happens.
Exactly.
Take it easy, take it calm, respect the beer. Oh, that is already looking beautiful.
I'm doing my best. We're live, so I can't make any mistakes.
And it is not the first time you actually do this, right?
No. I drink it a lot, and I like it a lot.
Why did you just wiggle the bottle before you finish pouring the last bit of beer into the glass?
In the bottle there's a second fermentation. So there's a small yeast underneath the bottle, and we want to get the right taste, the full taste in the bottle, and that's why I take all the complete empty of the bottle.
So what you are basically saying, when the beer is being put in the bottle, There is a small addition of extra yeast, fresh yeast. Yeah. You maybe add a little bit of extra sugar or fresh beer that has not been fermented yet. And that actually further carbonates and amplifies the body of the beer in the bottle. And then when you actually pour it, you want to be sure that you pour that sediment also in the glass, because that adds to the full flavor experience.
Well, Rick, I'm very happy that you are here. Exactly, that's the way. That's why we are swallowing the beer.
Swallowing the beer?
We're also going to swallow the beer. Well, first of all, this EBV is 6.5 EBV, and I'm going to take the first sip. Rick, cheers.
To your health.
To your health.
To everyone's health. And indeed, keep your distance, but keep enjoying. And let's hope we can soon taste and enjoy beer together in each other's company again. Here's to La Trappe.
Cheers. Oh.
What is that sort of like fruity smell that you get out of this beer? It has this strong, fresh, fruity fragrance.
It's the yeast we are using in our beer that gives the fruitiness of it.
Is that what you sometimes hear being described as esters?
Yeah, exactly, Rick. Thanks. I think you know much more about beers than I do, but yeah, you're correct on that one. Yeah, for sure.
I don't think, by the way, I know more about these beers than you do. I mean, you are sort of breathing La Trappe. But for me, what I really like about this smell, this aroma, is that it really sort of invites you to discover more layers in the beer. It's a really inviting aroma that makes you really want to gulp the beer.
The next sip is even much better. It's even much better. But now we're going to show you all a very small 4-minute movie from our brother Isaac. He's a prior, and he's going to tell you all about the 3 rules we have to follow to be a Trappist brewery. There are only at the moment 12 Trappist breweries in the world, and La Trappe is one of them. One of the first Netherlands Trappist breweries. There's one new one, is Zundert. Also very nice beers also. But I think we can put on the movie for the people at home.
La Trappe is Trappist ale. That means we adhere to the rules specified by the International Trappist Association. Those rules stipulate that the beer must meet 3 basic conditions to be able to be called authentic Trappist ale. In this video, we will set out how these 3 requirements play a part in our monastery and brewery. Ora et labora was the motto of Benedict's rule. Pray and work. Benedict's rule requires of monks to lead a life of tranquility and contemplation, a life of prayer. And Benedict also prescribes that monks must support their own community. In our daily life, we alternate between worship and work. We start our day with prayer, divine reading and silence at 4:30 in the morning. After that, we go to work at the bakery, the confectionery, the jam factory, the brewery, the abbey gift shop and the guest house. We convene for prayer every 3 to 4 hours up to the compline, which ends our day at 7:30 in the evening. Our routine is one of 8 hours of prayer, 8 hours of work and 8 hours of rest, year after year, century after century. Our current abbot, Dom Bernardus, once said, "The brewery shows that heaven and earth cannot do without each other." That is indeed correct. The brewery cannot survive without the abbey, and the abbey cannot survive without the brewery. That is the first condition Trappist ale has to meet to be considered genuine. Our beer is brewed within the walls of the abbey, which is not only where we work but also where we pray. Brother Isidorus wrote the recipe for Trappist ale back in 1884, and we still stick to this recipe today. That means we only use natural ingredients. The water of our beer comes from our own 150-meter deep well. Trappist ale owes its special flavor to the second fermentation. What we do is add sugar and yeast when we bottle the beer. Bottles are then placed in a warm room, which will generate additional alcohol and additional flavor. The quintessential La Trappe flavor. Brewing beer still requires craftsmanship. We, as monks, always keep a close eye on the brewing process. That is the second condition Trappist ale has to meet, to be genuine Trappist ale. A third prerequisite that beer has to meet to merit the name Trappist ale is that part of the proceeds must be donated to charity. That is yet another quality that makes our beer genuine Trappist ale. We would even go so far as to say that you can taste that in the beer. Trappist ale is beer with a heart. La Trappe is not just beer. La Trappe is the beer of work and prayer, the beer of the silence.
It's just amazing to have this whole story of Trappist being explained by the prior himself. Let's talk about what Trappist means more a little bit later, Funs, but I guess we also want to remind everyone around the globe to drink at your own pace. But if you have any questions, do feel free to jump on the chat function, because we can actually see those questions come up, and either Funs or myself will happily answer them for you.
100%. Yeah. We are all happy to answer all questions.
Not all questions.
Not all questions. Sorry, not all questions. Well, and we are very curious what people are thinking of our blonde beer. So they can give thumbs up or a heart. Just put on the button, and then we can see a rain, I hope, of a lot of thumbs and a lot of hearts. But if you don't like it, also don't hesitate to tell us, because we are very curious why you don't like it.
Yes, and in the end of the day, taste is something very personal, so you cannot expect everyone to like the same beer as much as anyone else does.
Exactly, Rick. Exactly. But we're still curious what people are thinking about it. And we are having a very nice plate of snacks in front of us, and maybe it's a good idea to tell which snack or dinner or food will pair as good with the La Trappe Blonde.
That's an excellent question, but one that you really cannot answer completely valid for everyone. The thing with food pairing is that the same goes for pairing with wine. You always want to look at a few items like the intensity of the dish, that should match the intensity of the beer. And if you look at it from the other way around, in this case you would start with the intensity of the beer, which is not particularly outspoken. It has a clear fruity aroma, but it has a relatively low ABV, so you don't want to be using a very strong dish with this. My personal preference would be either a fresh salad, like a Caesar salad, but definitely the younger and more mild cheeses would pair perfectly with this blonde. And for example, the brie we have here on the table, that would be a great combination, I think.
It's good to know that. Then we know what we can, or we know. It's a taste that you want to evolve for yourself. You have to tell yourself, okay. For example, I will take a nice piece of brie, but also some maybe some small goat cheese, not too heavy. It's very good to work together with our La Trappe Blonde, I think. Again, please drink at your own pace. We have 1 hour of being live, so we're gonna take 4 beers, and not everybody is drinking the same speed as, for example, me, because I'm very thirsty always. So don't hesitate to if we are going to the next beer, you can always look the presentation back on Facebook. It's going to stay on Facebook, And I think we're going to also put it on YouTube on the Borrel site, but I'm not sure. I'm looking at AIM. It's possible. Yeah, we can put them on YouTube later on, so you can look back if you want to. Are there already questions, Rick, or is just we got some views?
So far, we only get comments on the great hoodie you are wearing, but I guess this is a slightly prejudiced person as well. Peter Young, it is indeed a great hoodie, and finally Funs has one that is in his own size. No, you just enjoy the beer. There was another question that I had for you, Funs. We just saw in the presentation in the movie from Father Isaac, there are 3 important rules that a beer needs to adhere to in order to be called a Trappist. Do you know why they changed that? Because I believe that logo for authentic Trappist is really only in function since 1992. Is there a story behind that?
Rick, I hope you can help me, Rick, because I'm working only for 5 years at La Trappe, and I didn't do my homework that good. I hear right now. So maybe you can help me, because I really want to teach also, learn also, and I'm very curious, Rick. I'm very curious.
Well, now I've obviously thrown myself in front of the bus because I don't know either. The only thing I believe I've heard once is that they found that many people used the phrase Trappist product because it has a clear connotation of quality and authenticity for a lot of people. But for example, there were a lot of beers that were called a Trappist beer, sometimes brewed by order of Trappist monks, but not necessarily brewed by Trappist monks. And so a lot of beers were sold as a Trappist beer, but they didn't actually have a connection to a proper Trappist abbey. And I believe, but I'm not sure, because that same logo, authentic Trappist product, is also used for different products like cheese or candles. There's a lot of products being made in a huge variety of Trappist abbeys across the globe. I think they started using that logo in order to sort of protect the integrity of the products produced by Trappist monks. But we actually both don't know, so we'll Google it later for certainty.
Oh, Wikipedia always is right on this one. Never doubt Wikipedia, I heard. But that's the story. Now you're telling that I heard before. I had a small training last week on from Horeca Helden. It's a small. The guys are training bartenders for beers, and they told me this story exactly the same one. So I didn't took those lessons with me. Sorry, but that's true. The beers, the Trappist beers, are exactly with the authentic Trappist logo. And if you have the bottle, maybe we can give them a small show. It's there is always a logo on it, and I think it's a right corner, upper corner. Then you see the authentic Trappist logo.
I'm just trying to see if this works. It's on this side of the label. You see the hexagonal logo for the authentic Trappist products.
Oh. Okay.
And at the same time, we just get a message here that it is indeed true that the logo was introduced to protect the authenticity and quality. It's good that people from the monastery itself are actually looking, because they finally confirm that this was indeed the case.
Okay, it's always good to have the people from them. I don't think it's people from the monastery straight away. I'm not sure who is telling it. It's Dieter. It's Dieter, yeah, he knows his stuff better than I. That's why he's a manager and I'm not. That's always good to tell. But yeah, indeed, Dieter, thanks for your confirmation of this one. The La Trappe has, we have a range of 8 beers, core beers, and but we're now going to only taste the blonde, the double, the triple, and the quadruple because, sorry, Rick, sorry.
It's only 1 hour, huh?
It's only 1 hour, and all of these beers that we're going to taste are available around the world. So that's why. But we have a couple of more beers, and quickly make a small review of the beers we are having at La Trappe. We have our La Trappe Pure. It's a 100% biological beer, organic beer. It has the Skal logo of Skal certification. That means that you are following the rules of the biological way of brewing. Not only brewing, but there are more skull certified products. The ABV is 4.5. It's quite refreshing beer. It's not that high in ABV. And yeah, people ask, is it a Pilsner? Last time I had a tasting, Piet de Jong, who's telling that I have a very nice hoodie, asked me the same question, pure, is it a Pilsner? No, it's a light blonde, because there's also second fermentation on the beer, and Pilsners don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, no second fermentation in the bottle. Then we have our blonde, and we have our double. We're going to taste and we're going to talk about it later on. Then we have our Isidore, and it's quite my favorite. I'm not sure what you think about the Isidore, Rick.
Well, first of all, Isidore is a great example of the adventurous nature of the La Trappe brewery, because they are the only Trappist brewery, maybe now since Spencer has been introducing IPAs, but they were definitely, La Trappe was the first Trappist brewery to introduce other beers in its range other than the classic Belgian Abbey-style blonde, double, triple and barley wine, or quadruple as La Trappe started calling it. But there's indeed a larger variety, and for La Trappe Isidore, it's difficult to classify beer. It's an amber ale, I guess, but really without comparison, I can't really think of any other beer that in terms of strength and flavor come close to it. It's a pretty unique brew, I would say.
I tried the Time Meadow from the English Trappist. The ABV is a little bit lower. I think it's 6.7. For an English ale, it's high ABV. But the color is quite the same as the Isidore, and the taste, taste is again personally. But I also like the Time Meadow beer. I forgot the white beer we have, the Witte Trappist. It's during this time, summertime, it's a very refreshing beer. The ABV is 5.5. And it's not like all the other white beers we know on the Belgium-style white beers. They have a lot of coriander in it and orange peel. And our beer is, our Witte Trappist is without any extras in it. Maybe Rick, you can tell a little bit about the brewing, because it's original. It's a Weizen.
Yeah, for the La Trappe Wit, that's indeed almost a hybrid style beer. Whether it is a classic Belgian wit beer or more towards a German style Hefeweizen, in the end of the day, I don't think it is that relevant, because both beer styles are very close together. They both have wheat as the main ingredient, whereas most beers have barley as their largest portion of the grain bill in the brewing process. Wheat plays the biggest role in both the Hefeweizen and the wit beer style. Sure, there are some differences, otherwise we would not be talking about different beer styles. The Germans obviously strictly adhere to the Reinheitsgebot, and for a proper Hefeweizen you would really only be allowed to use water, malts, whether they are barley or wheat or rye or oats, yeast and hops. The Belgians, the Belgian style wit beer can actually be produced with a lot of additional flavor additives, and particularly in the Belgian wheat beer style, you will usually find things like aniseed, coriander, cinnamon, orange peel, lemon peel, all ingredients to sort of underpin and amplify the refreshing, pleasantly fresh sour flavor that is intrinsic for wheat beer. For wheat as a grain, actually, because it has this creamy mouthfeel, it has this filming mouthfeel, and this pleasant, refreshing, slightly sour taste in it. And the fun thing for the La Trappe Witte Trappist is indeed that you would, if you would taste it blind, you would not really notice any of those spices in it, although there are some spices in it. But it would be usually recognized by a blind tasting panel more towards the Hefeweizen style than a Belgian style wheat, because it lacks this spicy undertone. And just to come back to the pure, there's another reason why it cannot be a Pilsner. All beers by La Trappe are top fermented, and Pilsner, classic example, is a bottom fermenting beer style. The fun thing about the pure, though, is that it has the same hugely refreshing, quenching, quaffable characteristics that a Pilsner has. I mean, you just want to keep drinking this. It's quite addictive, actually.
It's still a soft drug.
It's still a soft
Still a soft drug. Use it wisely, but use it exactly. Thanks. I think we're going on to the next beer, and it's going to be the double. I have to see our technician if he can just drop over, because we're only with 3 persons at the moment in this bar, because there are rules, and we also have to follow these rules.
It's all great excuse for terrible service in this bar.
Yeah. And when you're if you are in the Netherlands, please visit the Borrel, but also the other establishments we have in the Netherlands, because I'm very glad that we have a nice bars who pouring our nice La Trappes.
Well, and
sorry, Rick.
While we're at it, in these difficult times, it's great to be able to be in a bar like this and support each other. I mean, in the end of the day, this whole COVID-19 crisis that we are all facing, we will probably get out of this stronger and better, but the only way we can get out of this is together, and it's great to see that we can bring people together globally in this beer tasting with these great hosts of Café Den Borrel. So for me, going away from the camera, guys, we love you.
Cheers.
That was a difficult one. Funs, you are already sort of enjoying sniffing this double. It's great you do that, because it's one of the things I always would like to tell people when doing a beer tasting, that it's best to actually follow a couple of pretty simple steps in order to get the most out of a beer tasting. Because first of all, what I always advise people is to look at beer. By simply looking at it, you can already tell so much about what you can expect or don't want to be expecting. The first beer we tasted was a blonde beer. This is clearly a darker colored beer. And the thing is, the color of beer derives from how you have treated the malt. In particular, with darker beers, it means there is definitely a portion of malt in the total grain bill that has been kilned at higher temperatures, which means the sugars and proteins in the beer, starches in the beer, in the malt, already start to caramelize a little, and the grains themselves get toasted, roasted, sometimes even burned, which means they not only change color, but they also change in flavor. And the color of your beer comes from the different colors that you have in malt. So, for example, with the blonde beer we had earlier, you see a blonde color. There are no darker malts in there, so you don't have to be expecting any flavors of toffee or coffee or caramel, which you definitely will be expecting if you look at this beer. And the fun thing is, if you then sniff the beer, you already get that clear caramel sensation out of it. So sniffing your second stage of beer gives you a huge idea of the aromas that the beer offers. And then, of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. In this case, the proof of the beer is in the drinking. You definitely pick up some caramel flavors, little hints of licorice, little hints of dried red fruits. It's actually pretty complex.
It's for a double, it's a quite complex beer. Our double is not that sweet, kind of sweet. We have a couple of other doubles, and I'm not saying that's wrong when doubles are sweet. But we have, for example, Grimbergen or Affligem or all those other doubles are quite sweet. And our brewmasters choose to make our double not that sweet. And in our region, and especially at the coast, we have some people who are putting, sorry to saying it, some grenadine syrup in it, and it makes it quite sweeter. And we are not advising to do it, because if it should be, the brewer should do it in it. And now we are talking about the color and the beers and the toastness of the malts we are using. Then we have a quite next step to our other beer that we're not going to taste, but a small talk about it. It is our Bock beer. It's a seasonal beer we are having. The ABV is 7.5 ABV, and it's much darker than the double we are using. And it's a traditional German beer, Bock. But I'm now looking at Rick, and yeah. It's true. There is a myth, or is it a myth? No, it isn't a myth. But Wikipedia is not only saying it's from Einbecher. They are starting to brew a Bock beer style, and the Bock beer style is especially now growing in the Netherlands as a seasonal beer. There are even a couple of Belgian brewers are brewing the Bock beer, but I heard it was only for the Netherlands market. Is that correct, Rick?
That is correct, and it's one of those great assets about beer as a product in general. There are so many fantastic stories about it. Not all of them are necessarily true. Some of them cannot be proven or cannot be proven to be wrong. But the story about Bock beer is actually a pretty beautiful one, because it also tells us a lot about the developments we've made in the last centuries in order to improve the quality of product. Do please realize that beer is the oldest man-made alcoholic beverage in the world. We now believe it to be some 13,000 years old, 13,000 years old, which actually makes it twice as old as wine is. I guess one of the great things that beer has always been doing is bring people together. But for a product that is so old and has played such a vital role in society over the millennia, we actually only for a very short period of time know exactly what we are doing, because one of the vital ingredients, yeast, was not discovered until the 1860s by Louis Pasteur. So one can argue that for millennia, brewers were basically, and this is a bit of a weird expression when tasting Trappist beers, but they were practicing devil's art, because they never really completely controlled the process. They didn't really know what yeast was and how they could actually influence yeast. They did know that in certain periods of the year, the beer would almost always be a success, and in other periods, the beer would almost always turn out to be rotten and undrinkable. Now we can understand it, but in those times, we're talking about the 13th, 14th century now, they actually made it illegal in Germany, for example, to brew between the 24th of April and the 24th of September, because in between it was too warm. And when it is too warm, beer yeast, or yeast in general, will still do its trick, which is converting sugar into alcohol and CO2 gas, but it will also produce a lot of other aromas. And yeasts perform ideally in a certain temperature bandwidth. If they are outside that bandwidth, they will still do their trick, but then they are not really in great shape. So they will start producing a lot of off flavors, a sort of nasty flavors that you don't want to be having in your beer.
Like carton box flavor, or
that is exactly one that you don't get from that, because that's more like a light infection. But for example, real nasty sours that can taste like nail polish.
Yeah.
We like sours in our beer, and believe me, a couple of 100 years ago, all beers were by definition sour, because there were always things you couldn't control about the fermentation that would give these off flavors. But there are different sorts of sour. Nail polish kind of sour is what you don't want to be having in your beer. And that happened, and they found that if the temperature was too high, you would almost always get beer that wasn't perfect. So that's why they disallowed brewing in the warmer time of year, which is exactly when you really need a quenching drink like a good glass of beer. So what they discovered in the city of Einbeck is, if towards the end of the allowed brewing season they would brew stronger beers, which meant using more grains per same amount of water, you would increase the alcohol content. If you would add more hops, you would actually get more of the preservative functions of the hops in the beer. That would make it last through the summertime. So you would then actually produce stronger beers that would survive in the summertime where you couldn't brew. They were also beers of really great quality. And these Einbecker brewers, they gained a lot of fame. So much so that a duke in Bavaria decided he actually wanted that beer made for him. So he tried to persuade an Einbecker brewer to start working for him, which they didn't. So he simply bought one, brought him over to Bavaria. And They, of course, have their own dialect. In Bavaria, they speak a Bavarian accent of German, which is quite strong in comparison to regular German, and they would pronounce Einbeck as Einpock. And the legend has it, this is definitely not proven true, but it's a great story. Let's not try and spoil it by the facts. No. They would order Einpockisches Bier. And if you order one, you would have to order Einpockisches Bier, which obviously sort of develops into ordering Einpockisches Bier, Einpockbier, Einpockbier, Einbockbier. And then, when they discovered the true secret of bottom fermentation, particularly in Munich, they started to brew special winter beers with the first harvest of summer barley, which you bring in like September. Then you would brew this beer, bottom fermented beer, that had to lager for quite a long time and was only put on the market in January, which was quite typically the 22nd or 23rd of January, which is the original name day of Wodan. Wodan, a Scandinavian god, rides a bock, and the image of a bock was then introduced to identify those beers. That made its way to the Netherlands, and we sort of adopted this tradition of autumn version bock beer. So the bock on the label actually has a little correctness when you know this story about Wodan, but in the end of the day, the bock will always be referring to its origin, Einbeck. And technically, a bock beer, still in Germany, it's brewed year-round these days. It will always be a stronger version of the standard beer by a brewery, because you find in Germany wheat box, Schwarzbier box, double box. You will find bock beers based on wheat. You will find bock beers based on lager. Actually, strong lager is nothing more than a bock interpretation for a standard lager. But in the Netherlands, it has developed into this seasonal specialty, brewed in summertime, launched in autumn, when usually the leaves start falling off the trees. Obviously, with the climate change, they don't fall at all anymore. But coming back to the La Trappe bock beer, that is the perfect.
That's why we ask Rick also for this presentation, and I'm very happy that Rick is here. He tells us all the stories. Rick, go on with your story about the La Trappe bock. Sorry.
Well, actually, the La Trappe bock, you could confuse people serving a double and serve a bock, and people will usually find that these styles are pretty close together, because they are both around 6.5% ABV. They have this definite caramel toffee-like flavor in it. The thing is, the tradition for Dutch bock beer is that it is typically bottom fermented. And as we already mentioned, all La Trappe beers are top fermenting. So there is the big difference there for the La Trappe bock beer. It will be resembling more towards a Belgian-style double than towards a proper classic, if you wish, Dutch-style bock beer. But the styles are quite close to each other, whereas hop bitterness will usually be the deciding factor. You don't really notice much hop bitterness in the double. You definitely get some bitters, but they come from the darker malts. Whereas in the La Trappe bock, which we don't have on the table today because it is spring and not autumn, you will find a more clear, bitter underlying note, which actually does come from a more pronounced hop bill.
Okay, yeah, I heard you also told me that yeah, you're talking to me, but you're talking to a lot of other viewers. That you are talking about the double malts you put in it. That's why it's called a double. That's a story I heard, and yeah, maybe just put a little bit more.
Yeah, put some wood on the fire there, Funs. But before I answer that one, our friends from La Trappe Thailand ask us what food should we ideally pair with double. Well, again, if you look at food pairing, you look at intensity. This is definitely a beer that is more intense than the blonde beer is, and it has these clear caramel toffee-like notes with still a pleasant, fresh bitterness in it. When malts get kilned on higher temperatures, they basically experience the same reaction that you will see when you are grilling a steak. It's called the Maillard reaction, and the Maillard reaction is simply the technical term for sugars and proteins that change color and flavor under the influence of temperature. They get darker, and the same happens if you bake or grill a steak. So it's a clear match. Any red meat that you put on the barbecue will by definition be a great combination with this double style.
And we also have a lot of vegan people, I think. All our trappes are vegan. Don't forget, all our trappes are vegan. What do you recommend for the vegan or vegetarians?
Well, the Maillard reaction also appears in vegetables. So any vegetables you put on the grill will get the same change in color and in flavor. So if you are a true vegan, it means you only do vegetables. Then get some broccoli, get some eggplant.
Red pepper.
Bell pepper. I would probably think paprika. We would call it.
Paprika.
Yeah, red pepper would be more the spicy.
Too spicy.
Yeah. But basically, any of those, or even, well, I'm not sure if the same works with tofu and another soy-based foods, but maybe our friends from Thailand can answer that for us. Anything you basically put on a grill or fry, that would work well with a darker beer, particularly with the double. And at the same time, in our own neck of the woods, anything autumn dish, any stampot or any stews, that absolutely, that's a surefire hit.
You can also, the beer is not meant to cook with it, but you can also make a very good stew or a roast pot with a beer.
Absolutely. The reason we usually not cook that much with beer is because the bitterness that comes from the hop will get way too pronounced if you heat them for a long time. But if you stew them, the heat is usually more tempered, and then they can actually start giving off their really beery flavors to the dish.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
But now I have to come back to your question.
Sorry.
What was the double?
I want to do a small message. There is a possibility that Facebook or the streaming is not working that good. For now, we are good, so let's stay on this. But if we are dropping out, please stay, drink, and we'll be back as quick as possible. But I just want to say it because we are live streaming, and we are on Facebook. So. Well, let's see. Rick, now we're going to talk about the double. Sorry to go back on that one.
No, not at all. Again, there are two stories here. Yes, today it basically means if you compare a single to a double, to a triple, to a quadruple, that in comparison to the same amount of water, you use increasing amounts of malts. Increased amounts of malts per amount of water means that you will get more fermentable sugars out of it. So that's why a double beer has more alcohol than a single one, a triple has more alcohol than a double, and a quadruple or a barley wine has more alcohol than a triple does. But that's how we do it today. If you look again in history, they didn't do it that way. You would actually use one grain bill, and you would rinse that out with hot water to extract the fermentable sugars and the starches that later on in the brewing process will be converted into sugars. But they would continuously rinse that hot water. So the first rinsing, if you wish, would give a wash with a particularly high amount of fermentable sugars in it. The second one would have less fermentable sugars, the third one even lesser, and they would sometimes even rinse it 5 or 6 times to produce a very low alcohol beer, which they would actually drink during the day. In those days, you would already get different strength of beers, not particularly intentionally, more for a practical reason, because they wanted to make as much use as they could from the grains they used to brew beer. And the challenge was, because also in those days, abbeys and cloisters would already hire contracted workers to do some of the hard labor for them. The monks could read, but many of those workers couldn't. So what they did, trying to identify what kind of beer was in what barrel, they would put crosses on those barrels. You, of course, realize that we now all have stainless steel beer containers, but that's a very new invention. For centuries we kept beer in wooden casks, not particularly to get a different flavor out of it, but that was the only way we could store them. And they would identify the stronger beer with more crosses than the lesser strong beer. And eventually you would come out to vessels without any crosses on it. That would be the lowest alcohol beer, the cheapest beer, the beer for daily consumption.
And it was a daily consumption for the monks, for a Trappist monks, they use it for daily consumption.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the strongest beer they would usually drink in the vasten period, in the time of the year where they couldn't eat, but they still needed some food and some consolation. We'll get to that beer later. Let's talk about that later. The only thing I still want to add now is that's a funny thing. We have a La Trappe Quadrupel, we have a La Trappe Tripel, we have a La Trappe Dubbel. We don't really have a La Trappe Enkel,
no.
But we do have a La Trappe Blonde. But that is pretty important to say. You should not confuse the Blonde with the single, because it is actually, it's again a great story. Can I tell the story about the development of Blonde?
We have all the time, I think. I'm all ears.
Actually, if you look at the alcohol content, the Blonde and the Double are pretty close. I think the Double is just slightly stronger, but essentially, and if you look at different brands, you will always see that the Blonde beer is competitive in strength to the Double. The thing is, Blonde beer as such, called for an Abbey beer or a Trappist beer, doesn't exist since 1976. It's a really very young beer style, and it was developed by an Abbey brewery called Leffe, who sold their triple to France, and that sold really well, but their darker double beer didn't sell that much, and they did some research and they found that the French people didn't really understand the concept of dark beer in those days. So the marketeer for Leffe, you know his name, Ben Vinken, he's a pretty big name even today with his Beer Passion magazine and all the activities he does for promoting beer in general, but Flemish beer in particular. Or should I say Belgian beer? No, let's not tread fire here.
No.
He came up with the idea, let's produce a double, but then with blonde malts. And that's what they launched in 1976, and that was like an instant success. And from that moment on, almost all Abbey and Trappist brewery has started to produce blonde-style beers.
Okay, nice story again, Rick. And please take a sip of your beer, because you should have a dry mouth right now. But that's why again Rick is here, and we're very happy to have him.
Great to be here with you, Vince.
Ah, yeah, I know. Thanks. I'm more like a DJ than a.
Stop underestimating yourself. Let's just enjoy beer.
Yeah, let's enjoy beer, and I think it's time to go to our third beer already. We told the live stream should take an hour, but I think we're gonna have to make it a little bit longer. I hope nobody is...
I cannot imagine that anyone is complaining.
Yeah, when they are complaining, please put them on the chat. Do we have any answers already of any questions already on the chat or not?
I missed them, and I'm not sure if the question for Thailand came through about the potential for the Maillard reaction in tofu and other soy-based dishes, but I haven't seen any questions yet.
Well, don't hesitate to ask the questions through our chat.
Maybe we are just so clear and
also
crystal clear on what we are saying that there are no questions, but we are open for them.
We're open for them. Well, now we're gonna try our triple. The ABV is 8%. It's again a blonde-colored beer, and Rick is gonna open mine. We have to take distance. Still keep the distance. Be aware of it, everybody.
It's a good thing I have sort of this social airbag already. It's easy for me to keep a distance with you.
Social distance with an airbag. Rick is going to pour the beer how it should be. I'll give you a new glass, Rick.
Thank you.
Cheers. And I'm curious if it's on the webcam right now, how Rick's gonna pour it.
It's all about taking it easy, taking the time.
It's like a true artist, how it's going right now. And now it's up to me to pour it.
Yeah, and while you pour it, just to bore you with another historical fact, blonde beer as such is also a relatively new thing. For quite a long time, the people who kilned the malts couldn't really properly control the temperatures on which they dried and kilned the grains. So they would probably always burn and get scorched at least. So only with the invention of cokes were we able to control more the temperature on which we kilned the malts, which means that we are only, maybe for 200 years able to produce more blonde-colored malts than in the millennia before. And we are now about to enjoy a golden blonde triple, but mind you, even that is a pretty young style, because it was your counterparts, the Trappist Abbey of Westmalle, who in 1936, when they opened their new brew house, introduced the first version of their golden triple. It was the first beer to come onto the market to be called a triple to begin with, but it was the first golden colored triple as well.
Okay.
And if you still look at, for example, to other Trappist counterparts like Rochefort or Westvleteren, all their beers are dark. Even their, for example, the Rochefort 8, you could actually term it as a triple, because it's not strong enough to be a barley wine or the quadruple. It's too strong to be a double. It is technically still a dark triple.
Yeah, it is. No, first of all.
And sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I want to cheer, Rick. Sorry.
Let's cheer, but let's also, while we cheer, or... How do you actually say that in English?
Cheers.
Cheers.
How we Prost? No, not Prost.
We're
Slange.
celebrating.
We're celebrating.
It's funny to realize that many beers that we now know as a light-colored beer were originally dark. Even Duvel, for example, was dark when it was invented in 1926, and they didn't change the recipe for Duvel until 1969. Before 1969, Duvel was a dark beer, and only since 1969 is it blonde or gold-colored.
I didn't know that at all. But
all
still,
useless facts. You can't go to the baker and say, "Hey, baker, did you know that Duvel used to be black? Now give me your bread." He will say, "No, you have to pay for this."
Yeah, no, that's a shame. But I'm very glad that we had some small facts and figures.
We actually get a pretty interesting question here. What is the best temperature to drink? This sounds like a question for you, Fons.
Well, yeah. Thanks for asking me this question. On the bottle, we have our best temperature drinking. It says, I think, in the right underneath the bottle, you can see the best temperature.
Yeah, the recommended temperature to drink it.
Temperature. Yeah. I recommend always don't drink it too cold.
And why is that?
Because you get a lot of flavors disappear when your beer is too cold. I always make the same thing with wine. Don't drink your white wine too cold, because if you're drinking white wine too cold, you just get a slight sour refreshment you're going to drink, and the flavors are disappearing because it's too cold. So we have a small thing that we're saying, just put the ABV +1.
And transfer that into centigrade.
Yeah.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Yeah,
you actually recommend to look at the alcohol content of a beer, take the ABV at 1 point, and then convert that into Celsius, and that's your recommended drinking temperature.
It's what I'm
Beautiful.
It's what I'm always saying. I'm not saying that for all the beers it's true, but for the most of them it's a nice thing to.
It makes you wonder then why there are breweries who have these ice-cold taps, because that essentially means that they chill it so far down that you don't taste anything anymore.
Yeah.
That's total rubbish then.
Yeah, it is. It is marketing. It's marketing.
Let's stop drinking ice-cold beer.
Your pilsners, you can drink them cold, but not ice cold, and especially for the guys who are behind the bar, it's a quite heavy thing to do. Oh, sorry, I'm not in the.
You are.
Okay.
But you were sort of drifting away to the edge of the image. No, but I mean, we can joke about this, but you are very right. The more you chill something, the less the aromas are able to escape for the beer or from the wine or from the food. Plus, how colder it is, it sort of dampens your taste buds in your mouth. It makes it impossible to discover some of the flavor elements in it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we want to drink our beer at a normal temperature around 8-10 degrees. I think it's the best thing to have.
So Dennis Kuipers, we hope we have answered your question there. There's a new question coming in. Is the difference between a blonde and triple only based on the difference in the density of ingredients? I am inclined to say no, because there are slightly other ingredients in the triple as opposed to the blonde.
Yeah, and it depends on which blonde and which triple you're drinking.
Well, we are drinking the La Trappe.
Drinking the Trappe. Yeah, there is a difference in it. Yeah, we're using other malts. We're using, I'm not sure, but I might have to ask maybe some guys who are viewing. I think the yeast of the blonde and our triple are the same. So we have two yeasts in our brewery, and one of them is for the white and for our pure, and the rest should be for the rest of our beers. And
I am so old that even reading glasses don't work. But I am actually pretty sure that there are more spices used generally in a triple as opposed to a blonde. You would typically see that they use a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of coriander seeds, more in a triple than they would do in a blonde. I'm not sure because I can't read it. I'm sorry about that.
There is nothing in it. I will try
There's
to
nothing
read
in it?
I will try to read it, Rick. It says, wait 1 second, water, barley wine, glucose syrup, hops and yeast.
Yeah, the thing is, that doesn't mean there are no spices in it, because the only thing you need to list on the ingredient list is products that are still physically in the product. So if you use spices in the production, they would be considered to be aiding ingredients, and you don't technically have to list them. I'm pretty convinced that there are some spices in the triple. Typically, in a triple, they will use more of those herbs and spices as opposed to a blonde. So I would say there is not only the difference there based on density, but definitely also on more spices towards the triple use.
Yeah, and the food pairing on the triple is, I tried with a beer and food pairing evening, a very nice curry with it, Thai curry with some extra herbs, like quite spicy food, and was very good to have together.
Yeah, and again, cinnamon and coriander seeds are typically used also in the Thai cuisine, so I can totally see those match. We actually have another question from Thailand. This is actually from a bar owner in Thailand. If there are only two beers, triple and double, which beer should we start first and why? Vince?
I am always recommended start with a low ABV, but maybe it's good with those two beers, with the double and the triple, to start with the triple, because the flavor of the double is more intense and heavier, I think, than the triple. So first start with the triple, and then with the double, or drink a glass of water in between. It's also working.
Well, that is definitely a recommendation if you really want to be tasting those beers in depth individually. But I totally agree with you, Vince. You, as a rule of thumb, can always look at the ABV and build up in a flight, starting with low ABV and working your way up. But it is not just about the only way is going to be up. There are so many more elements that play a role, and particularly what you just mentioned, the flavor intensity. That is for me even more important than looking simply at the ABV level. For example, and I totally agree with your recommendation, doing the triple first and the double later. The caramel toffee flavor is way more intense than the delicate nature of the triple. Same thing would apply to a hoppy IPA. I would still drink a hoppy IPA of 5% ABV after having tasted even the triple or the double. They are definitely more strong beers in ABV, but you would definitely destroy, to a certain extent, your flavor buds by the big, bold, hoppy aromas that will make it impossible for you to taste the delicate balance of a triple.
Of a triple, yeah, exactly. And the IPAs are an explosion in your mouth because of the hoppiness of it. So.
By the way, it seems that Simon Holland is already booking a trip to Thailand when the planes go again. He wants to visit that bar in Thailand.
Ah, that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
But this is the great thing, isn't it? I mean, this is really bringing people together all across the globe. And it's, again, beer at the center, bringing people together all across the globe. How beautiful is that?
It's a true beauty.
Did I already say we have a great line of work?
I think that's the second time you already mentioned it, and
Sorry.
we are blessed to do this work, and I'm very happy also to work on this brewery, the Koningshoeve, and I'm very happy that quite a lot of people are joining us for this tasting, and at home I hope, and all in good health. That's the most important thing.
That is definitely the most important thing, Vince. And I think we are really blessed that we are all and our families are still healthy.
Exactly. Well, we're now already talking for, I think, a big an hour or not. I'm looking at the technician. Yeah, we're talking for an hour already. I hope everybody is enjoying their beers. And
We are.
I am for sure. And even the plate of snacks. Yeah, I'm taking only the sausage over here because it's most close to me. So I just, but Ricky didn't
You
eat
just
anything
take your
yet.
sausage, my friend.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat my sausage for sure. That we had already talked about our. No, we have the complete range already in it. Or not?
No, I mean, we're still looking to taste the quadruple later on. And then I believe there is a lot to tell about the quadruple and all the different varieties and variants of that.
Yeah, that's true. Our barrel age program we don't talk about at this moment because it's not.
We don't talk about the
Yeah,
barrel age program.
We're gonna talk about it's because it's not available in all countries.
But
So
are people allowed to know that there is this great barrel aging program?
they
for
are allowed to.
quite some years.
They are allowed to know for sure, but the biggest problem is it's not available around the globe. So it's a very unique, and maybe we can open a bottle just to show them how it looks.
That would be cruel.
Cruel. No, we don't. Then we don't.
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's do it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
We're cruel. We can be cruel.
We can be cruel. Yeah, it's Saturday evening, afternoon, and morning. On the morning, it's every afternoon or evening. So we're allowed to be cruel.
But let's start maybe talking about this base quadruple first. Again, I mentioned that you would normally have this build-up in strength from single, double, triple, and then I would always say that after this comes barley wine.
Yeah.
We have the La Trappe Quadrupel. I think it is important to realize that phrase was actually coined by the monks of La Trappe in 1991.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the monks get the name quadruple, and La Trappe started with the name quadruple. It's a name. It's a barley wine, but they use the name quadruple.
Yeah,
exactly.
but now it has started to be more like a synonymous style definition. People would call it a quad style.
Quad style,
compared
exactly.
to,
Yeah.
really annoying. They would typically call it Belgian quad. I mean, it's like the Dutch monks of La Trappe coined the phrase.
Yeah, but why it's annoying? I'm not sure why it's annoying. I think you can see it also as a compliment that people using the name and take it off their own.
That's actually a great insight. Yeah, let's take it as a compliment.
It's the same thing as it's a glass half full or half empty.
The glass is always too big.
Yeah, that's true, Rick. That's true.
But anyway, barley wine, quadruple. Where does that come from? Have you got any clue?
Yeah, I heard a clue that barley wine came from. They were putting bread into a big pile of yeast, and yeah, maybe you have a very very good explanation of it because mine is just a Wikipedia again.
I think putting bread into water, then making beer out of that, is going back to the very origin of how they produce beer, which, the process of bread baking is pretty similar in the initial steps as to brewing beer. And we all know this sort of saying that a glass of beer equals 2 sandwiches with cheese, or equals 2 slices of bread. Which actually is untrue because beer is pretty low in calories. So even a triple will only come close to 1 sandwich with cheese. Yeah. Depending on how much cheese you put on the sandwich, of course. But the thing is, I guess the whole thing of barley wine is literally to be found in, if you take the word apart, it's the kind of beer that drinks like a wine, is strong and intense like a Burgundy or a rich Bordeaux wine. Mm-hmm. But since there are no grapes in it, but it's made of barley, you would call it a barley wine. And typically that is actually the kind of beer that we were referring to earlier during the Vasten period, where by I think 40 days you are not allowed to eat.
Yeah, 40.
Is-
Yeah, 40.
I think it is 40 days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you can still drink in the daytime. The monks, particularly some 300, 400, 500 years ago, when they were really still working hard in their cloisters and in their abbeys and monasteries, because they had to work the land, they had to feed the cattle, they made their own bread and clothes and everything. They were really hard working and praying quite a lot all the day. They needed their energy to actually be able to do that, and they came up with a pretty nifty solution, I would say. They would create this beer with a high amount of residual sugars, so sugars that were not converted into alcohol, because sugar is essentially the fuel for any living organism. So by drinking 2 or 3 glasses of barley wine or quadruple, they would get enough energetic value in their bodies to make it through the day. And I
keep on
assume
working.
they would have a great time at the same time.
Yeah, I think also, and if especially if you have for our Trappist monks are working 8 hours, sleeping 8 hours, and praying 8 hours. So
Nicely balanced through the day.
day in, day out. So it's a nice balanced day they have. Yeah, that's so. We're already talking about our quadruple.
It's time to actually try it, don't you think?
I think it's time to try our quadruple, exactly.
Waiter, can we have our quadruples, please?
And maybe we have 2 clean glasses somewhere, or
I'm actually going to use my blonde glass because I think that will not be spoiling the flavor experience.
I will do the same for that one.
Let me open your bottle.
And then a small sales talk. We also, and yeah, Rick, you have to do the small sales talk about this very nice bottle.
Well, maybe can I just be beautiful and hold it, and you do the talk, because I don't know what the sales talk is about this bottle.
Well,
I'm not a sales guy.
No, you're ambassador. I try to be a sales guy. This bottle is first time this year, 2019. We put this on the market, and this year again, 2020, we put it on the market again. It's a limited edition, and it's very nice to drink with friends. But at this time, it's not.
It's a limited edition.
We put in and it's gone. Yeah, it's a limited edition because we are just brewing a couple of bottles. We're making a couple of bottles of it, and it's available through our importers. So and the complete around the globe.
Would it be the same quadruple as the one we are about to drink?
It's the same quadruple we're going to drink. We're going to drink
in a big commemorative bottle.
Yeah, exactly, and it's good for saving it and for layering it for another year or 2 years.
Well, that's an interesting question too, because you hear this talk sometimes about beer usually being at its best when it is fresh, when it's brewery fresh, but you also have a lot of people who age their beer and leave it to develop, and sometimes for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Is there any insight you can offer us there?
My opinion is still take around 5, 6 years, and then the complete second fermentation is over. So then you get a little bit slice of more alcohol, but a real slice a bit of more alcohol in it. I think it's 0.1 or 0 something. As when you wait for the beer, when you lager it for a couple of years, and you're gonna get more Madeira taste of it and port. I'm not sure. Is port? Is it?
Portification.
Portification. Yeah. So it's
I'm
possible.
not sure if it's correct when you say that your second fermentation continues for so long, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think they don't release the beer onto the market after the second fermentation is finished in the warm chambers in the brewery. The thing is, you still have in every beer a whole variety of biochemical processes going on, and they will change the flavor and even the look and the feel of the product over the years.
That's correct. But what I always heard when Toon, I'm not sure if you know Toon, at our brewery. So people, when you are gonna visit our tasting room and do a tour, then you see Toon, and Toon Laudemans is always telling that there's a small, very small, maybe going up with the second fermentation for the alcohol, very small.
Well, that is definitely true, by the way. But that second fermentation creates more body and more alcohol. But as far as I have always understood, is that should be finished by the time it goes onto the market. By the way, these beers are not pasteurized, are they?
No, they are not pasteurized.
No.
None of our beers are pasteurized. None of it.
No, well, that would definitely stop the re-fermentating process anyway. But maybe it's also important to add that you can age beers in general, but better when they are dark, and the more strong they are, the better they age, because both hops and alcohol are natural preservatives. In the end of the day, beer is a staple product, so it is bound to go off in flavor at some stage in its life anyway. Yeah. The great thing is you can never get ill by drinking an old beer. I mean, even a 200-year-old bottle of beer you can drink easily. It will probably taste rotten, but you can't get sick of it.
No.
And like with strong wines, the maturing process will reach a top, and then it starts to degrade from there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I already heard is that it's for 5-6 years. It's the best thing.
Then it's at its stop.
It's at its stop, and then try to drink it. And it's and the best thing to do it, to taste it, is take a brand new one and take the old one.
Make a comparison. That's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
So that's a great piece of advice. Just buy yourself a couple of bottles of Quadrupel, store them in a dark, dry, and preferably relatively cool place. Leave them there for a couple of years.
Try
buy
to
a few
leave
new
them.
ones.
Try to
stay away from them.
Try to stay away from.
And then compare them with some fresh beers.
With some fresh beers,
That's
exactly.
an excellent idea.
Yeah. And again, here we get the food pairing with it. And it's I always think about a small dessert with it, chocolate, or some cheese, some quite heavy cheese.
Blue cheese would work beautifully. The thing is, again, you look at intensity. This is a pretty strong beer. I mean, I think it's 9.5%, 10%.
It's 10%.
10%.
Yeah, ABV is 10.
It is actually less dark than the double is, so it's more like a very dark amber, if you wish. So it's got a high caramel baseline, and on top of it, again, huge amounts of dry red fruits.
Slight
there's
sweet.
even figs there. There are dates there. It's not that sweet actually.
Yeah, slight sweet. It's not that would, but yeah, it's slight
bittersweet in a way, and that's the fun thing. There is still a lot of residual sugar in this beer, balanced out with a large amount of hops, but you don't really taste either of them because they harmoniously fold into one flavor. Yeah. And yeah, this would definitely be my recommendation beer for a strong dessert, whether it is chocolate with red fruits and maybe some ice cream with it, but going on to the stronger cheeses, that's like a party, baby.
Well, I think we can end with this one. It's like a party baby.
Well, we actually have one question again coming in from La Trappe, Thailand. Does the monk who make it also drink it?
Once a week on Sunday, I heard. They are drinking 1 glass of La Trappe.
Are they not drinking 1 glass of La Trappe at lunch anymore?
No, not anymore, no.
Okay, and maybe this is a silly question from me, but there are still monks in the abbey, but are there actually still monks working in the brewery?
No, only our prior is taking the supervision of the brewery. There are none monks working anymore in our brewery, but there are still our supervision of the complete brewing process and of the taste and also about marketing. They are the leaders. They are saying if we can do it, yes or no. So everything we want to do first has to go to all our monks.
Yeah, because they obviously still have the final say in all the crucial
100%.
aspects of the brand and the beer. And
exactly.
I think it is actually the reality that in most Trappist monasteries, they will always hire contracted workers to do the physical brewing work.
Exactly.
There are a few examples. I know that, for example, in Zundert, two of the brethren are actually pretty deeply involved with the brewing process in Spencer and in Trafontane and Tin Meadow. They are also having monks working in the brewery, but it is definitely not the case that a Trappist beer is per definition made by a monk.
No, it's in supervision of our monks.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And they actually supervise some pretty awesome beer.
Yeah, they know how to supervise. Well, I think we are now at the end of our tasting, Rick. Well, I think we are now talking already about 1.5 hours. Am I correct?
Not sure if it's already 1.5 hours, but we have been talking a lot about great beer, and actually I believe we can still continue for another 3 hours, but that's maybe a little bit too much for asking.
Yeah, and for me also. No. First of all, I want to thank a lot of people who are looking and viewing on the Facebook site. Like it, please like it. And I want to thank the Borrel again in Deurne. We cannot appreciate it as much as possible. Also, especially Frans. He's not here right now, but I'm hoping he's doing good now. He has some other familiar things to do. And I really want to thank Rick for his time to come over complete from Amsterdam to Deurne.
Normally, I would now share the love by giving you a big hug, but we have to keep our distance, Funs. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for hosting this.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and keep enjoying, stay safe, stay healthy, and there will be better days ahead of us where we can do this again in real life. I already look forward to doing it.
And keep your distance. Cheers.
You!
Je moet zeggen als we eruit zijn. Je moet zeggen als we eruit zijn.